The pandemic put schools through a whirlwind, and it's important to acknowledge how they've been able to adapt and thrive through many obstacles that were thrown their way. Here to recognize school board members across the state for their leadership and efforts to create stronger California schools is California School Boards Association Chief Information Officer Troy Flint. Welcome, Troy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're happy to have you on. So, Troy, what special challenges have schools faced over the past couple of years?
Well, I think it's no secret that the biggest challenge schools face was adapting to remote learning during a time when in person instruction was being suspended. And then subsequently, the biggest challenge was returning to in person instruction in a very uncertain and constantly changing environment where regulations and restrictions about COVID mitigation, about mask wearing, were all over the place for a substantial period of time, where there was dissension among some sectors of the population about how those rules were being implemented and administered. And then, of course, the greatest and most pressing challenge is learning recovery, helping restore learning levels to where they were before the pandemic and beyond. Because it's important to know that even before the pandemic, not everything was copacetic. And so, what we're exploring is school boards that are going beyond the norm to really invest in their students and to use this disruption as a chance to expand and enhance offerings for kids and improve outcomes for California public school students.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, how has the role of school board members changed since the pandemic?
School board members have become a lot more visible. That's created some short term challenges as they try to adjust, but overall, it's a positive for the long term. Prior to the pandemic, very few people were participating in board meetings overall. People didn't have as much insight into what is going on in the classroom. But what we see now is a lot more engaged group of parents. And yes, that can be trying for board members at times. And we have seen incidents where there have been hostile board meetings and so forth. But overall, we prefer engagement to apathy. So the challenge now is just to make sure that you're investing well in students, you're being transparent and communicating clearly to the public about how and why you're making those investments and the benefits they're going to pay for students. And over time, rebuilding that trust so you have a community that is engaged in a positive way and supporting shared goals for students.
And with there being more engagement with family members and parents, what would you say the public does not understand about school boards that they should know?
Probably one of the biggest things people forget about school boards is that this is essentially a volunteer position. Some school districts have stipends for school board members, but if you're doing the job well and putting in the work it takes to be an effective school trustee, that is not nearly enough to make it worth your while. You have to do this job because you have a commitment to students and learning, because you see schools as a foundational part of our democracy and have the ability to improve people's lives. That really is what drives most of our school members. You need to have a sense of passion. And sometimes I think that gets lost in partisan bickering or adult arguments. And everyone needs to come together and focus on what's best for students, have a student first mentality when evaluating what goes on in schools.
Yeah, and that's a big responsibility to have. What are some of the steps that school boards are taking to expand opportunities for students?
So there's a lot of investment in staffing, particularly interventions for those high need students or students who fell further behind during the pandemic, whether that's extra tutoring, small group sessions, or sometimes even one-on-one, expanded school days, more before and after school programming, more support for mental health, which is always an issue, but certainly was exacerbated during the pandemic. So there are a lot of steps that districts are taking, English learner programs, because that's another group of special interest as well. So it varies according to the needs of each particular district. And that's one thing that's so important about this campaign, because it shows the diversity of California, not only the demographics of the population, but also how you have large schools, small schools, urban, suburban, rural, with all different makeups. And they find needs that are particular to their community and address them with customized solutions. And that's where the local control aspect comes in. And it's so important to the outcomes in our public schools.
All great information. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and telling us about this campaign. And to go for more information to revisit this interview, you can catch it on our website momentarily at yourcalifornialife.com.